Good morning, everyone. It is February 1st, 2026. I'm starting a series here, I guess. I don't know. I want to start going live a little more often. And I posted here a few minutes ago that I wasn't really sure how I was going to go about doing all of this. Some of it was probably just going to be me just talking and me sharing what I have going on inside of my head, or at least what I got going on in my life. And at the same time, I also put out there that, if you got questions or anything that you would like me to give my perspective on, or just a topic that you would like to have discussed, I am very open to doing so. Right now, the only thing that's really coming to my mind is the polarity in which we very clearly see existing very much in the United States. I can say that because it's in the United States where you can most definitively, in my mind, see the very clear split of the two worlds. And it's really interesting because in the North right now, we have all of the things going on with ICE and the immigration and the abuse of power and different things that are happening up there. While in the South, we have literally monks, walking across America for peace and loving kindness. And so you have this very clear dichotomy in where we can devote our focus to. We can focus on all of this pain and all of this anger and things that lead to contrast and lead to conflict. We can focus on all of that, or we can focus on people that are attempting to spread a message that is meant to unite and bring people together and help heal some of the wounding that we have in this world. And it is a powerful lesson in understanding that in this physical world that we exist in, there's always going to be the light and the dark. And what comes to us individually, what we directly experience, is a reflection of whatever energies that we are holding within us, whatever beliefs that we are holding in us that we feel are the most true. Whatever things that we believe are the absolute truth for us, life is going to reflect that back to us in different ways, whether it is in the experiences that we have, which is the first way that our Creator really communicates back with us, is through our experiences. But it's also going to be in the people that we encounter in our lives. And the more personal the thought processes or the beliefs that we have, the closer the person who reflects those to you is going to be. So if it's something that's deeply, deeply personal about oneself, then more than likely the message is going to get delivered from somebody that is very close to you, and it's going to cause a lot of pain because of that, because they're so close to you. And it's a reflection of the different ways that we betray ourselves, the different ways that we dishonor ourselves, the different ways that we don't do the things that probably are the most beneficial for us. And it's one of the reasons why I'm so big on teaching about mindfulness, because you learn through, especially through Buddhist teachings, of how important mindfulness is just for your overall daily experience of life. When you hang around a bunch of people that's constantly on some negative shit, that are constantly complaining or judging others or condemning others or really just beating up on themselves, you're absorbing that energy. You know, we're like these we're like these very powerful sponges. You know, we like to think of ourselves as an island of ourselves, island to ourselves, and that's not the case at all. You know, we are fields of energy that are interacting with other fields of energy, and so we mix and we match and we pour into each other, and you know, whomever we are around, we're taking something from them and they're taking something from us. And so if you keep putting yourself in situations or keep putting yourselves in positions where you're around the types of people that are going to bring you down, your life is going to spiral in a downward direction. And that's because the energies that you are attaching yourself to are basically like sandbags or like anchors that pull you down. Now you can release those things. We always have the opportunity to choose who we're going to have in our life or what we're going to have in our life or what we're going to focus on in our life. You know, I on lots of social media, I'm always seeing people talking about, you know, how toxic social media is and they need to take a break from social media. Now, what you need to take a break from is the people that you are following. You're the one who cultivates your own algorithms. You're the reason that your feed looks the way that it does. It's because of all of the things that you give time to, the things that you like, the things that you comment on. That is programming your feed. And if you're like, oh, my feed is so toxic, stop giving your attention to toxic shit. You're the reason your feed is toxic. It ain't because other people are toxic. And I understand that other people are in places in their journeys where they're not saying or doing the most healthy or loving things. But you don't have to keep seeing their stuff because you can block, you can unfollow, you can, oh my God, you can just not pay attention to it. And then your experience of social media automatically becomes more positive. And it is disempowering to oneself to believe that the only option that you have is to step away from something. Because here's what you don't get. If you don't change up who the hell you following, as soon as you get your ass back on social media, you're going to be seeing the same shit that you were seeing before. And it might be worse because people might be in a worse off place. But there's also plenty of people and plenty of content out there that is extremely positive and extremely loving and extremely motivating and inspiring. And you could be giving your attention to that. But hey, man, what are you paying attention to? What are you paying attention to? You can't blame the world for being the way that it is if you keep giving your attention to a bunch of shit that you ain't trying to see. Because what we give our attention to will determine what choices we make moving forward. And if we give our attention to things that are inspiring, things that build us up, things that give us new ideas about possibilities, then the ability to create something novel that is better for ourselves or for humanity itself goes up exponentially. But if you keep focusing on people that ain't really bringing shit to the table but a bunch of negativity, then I mean, what are you actually contributing other than more negativity? You know, I've learned in the last few years that if I want to be happy, then I have to be so focused on my own happiness, not to the point where I'm being selfish, okay? Now, there's going to be times where I have to be mindful about giving help. And it's been something that's been challenging for me because, you know, I always want to be of service to people. But at the same time, I recognize that sometimes putting myself out there for others while I'm in a state where I need rest or I'm uncentered, I'm unbalanced, maybe I'm going through some shit. And there are plenty of times where I have moments where the energies of the world are very, very heavy. Um, and I can feel them, and it does. It really causes me to really close myself off temporarily. I tend to take space because I know how I feel during those times, and I also recognize that my energy field is very large, and I don't really want to be projecting that type of energy around me for other people to pick it up, because I know it can scramble them a little bit, and so I'll put myself away to meditate, to do my 3 steps, to listen to music. Sometimes I do rebounding, and if you don't know what rebounding is, it's when you basically are just standing and you're pulsating your body up and down. You're just bouncing on your heels, bam, 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 bam. Like if this is your foot, and this part is your heel, you're basically just raising your feet up over and over, and you're just rebounding, bam, 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 and you're slamming your heels into the ground. It's a very grounding thing. It's also a really great way to move energy through the body when you have excess energy in the body. And it's something that happens often. I do often get an excess amount of energy in the body because I receive a lot of energetic downloads now. Most of a lot of times the energy that's coming through, it's coming through in frequency ranges that's only really available in like the theta brainwave state. And I tend to stay in alpha and theta brainwave states quite often, and so I get these really, really intense downloads. And one of the things that I teach people is from Chinese traditional medicine, and it's to help circulate energy, and it's placing your tongue on the roof of your mouth. You think of the word like elephant or elevator or something like that. That L sound, wherever the tip of your tongue touches when you say L, that hard L, wherever that touches, that is the connection point of the governing vessel and the conception meridian in Chinese traditional medicine. And it creates an energetic loop that goes up and down the front and back side of the spine and energy centers. And so because often I'll get headaches, I'll get these pressure headaches, and I know that's from too much energy moving up into the brain and then stopping. It's not being able to circulate. And so I put the tip of my tongue to the roof of my mouth, and I allow that energy to start. I can create the channel so that the energy can continue to flow. And then through intentional breathing, I imagine my breath moving along those channels and circulating that energy on the inhale and exhale. And so it creates an energetic flow using my own intention. The other part is what you learn in Taoist traditions is about the 3 different storage areas, but also the 3 different minds: the head, the heart, and the hara. Okay, and so obviously we have the energy in the head. The heart is another storage spot. It's why we can get heart flutters and different things. We also get them in the gut area, because the gut has neurons, the heart has sensory neurites, and the brain has neurons. These are 3 different sections of mind. So we have conscious mind, we have subconscious mind, and essentially we have the superconscious mind in the heart itself. And so what you do, what I do, is whenever I have too much energy that has moved to the head, I put the tongue to the roof of my mouth, one hand on my heart, and one hand on my hara or my sacral, and that helps move the energy from here to the heart to God. And usually that helps clear up my headaches pretty dang quickly. And it's part of the understanding that, we are physical beings. We have this intellect, but we're also spiritual beings. We have energetic bodies. We have a soul, and we have a spirit. And as such, we have to be able to connect and harmonize all three. We have to be able to make sure that we're being led by the spirit. We are using our hearts to be the director, the guidance point. Whatever experiences we have, we want to bring them into our heart and let our hearts decide what is the best way to move forward. In the teachings of mystical Christianity and in Gnosticism, and in the early Christian church, we get into this concept of kenosis, which means the emptying out of oneself. And you want to empty yourself because that's the purification process. You want to remove all of the barriers to love that you have within you. You want to remove all of the disempowering and limiting beliefs that we have. We want to release those things. And then the ultimate goal is theosis, which is the process of literally becoming like God. It is all of the steps and processes that you take to become more and more and more like the nature of ultimate reality. And if you study ontology, and I do study ontology, the nature of ultimate reality, the nature of God, then you start getting into very, very, powerful places and statements of being. And so the goal is to be perfect as the Father is perfect, as Master Yeshua said. And some people hear that phrasing, be perfect as the Father is perfect, and they automatically get discouraged. It's not telling you to literally be perfect. It's telling you to strive for perfection, to be like God as much as possible, to do as best as you can to be in the nature of God, to be a child of God. That is what child of or son of means. It means to be in the nature of. It means to be like, to embody that. And that's what I teach more than anything. I teach embodiment, man. It's cool that you know a lot of spiritual verses and everything. That's great. It's totally cool that you have a flawless attendance record in church or synagogue or in your mosque. That is awesome, and I am proud of you for doing that, for making that level of diligence and consistency. That's wonderful. However, the way you love is the measuring stick. It always has been. And it is only from, the lesser teachings that it becomes more than that. The way that we love our higher power and the way that we love the higher power's creations says so much about our beliefs. It says so much about our understandings of life and of the world itself. If you believe that you are separate from God, that you are separate from others, that you are separate from nature, then chances are you're not going to be very respectful of it. You're not going to honor it and love it to the depths that knowing and understanding oneness would bring you. You are going to give the quality of love that you have received. You're going to share the quality of love that you understand. And that's why, the understanding of gnosis, or experiential knowledge gained through experience. The reason that is so important is because the entire reason our souls took on physical form was to experience, to know experientially what we knew conceptually. And when we talk about being transformed by the Spirit, well, that's an experiential thing. To be transformed, meaning having your mind transformed and creating more mindfulness and being very intentional about what thoughts you give power to. You know, being intentional in your words, being intentional in your actions. These things, when done from a mindset of what love will do or how love will handle something, it completely changes your entire outlook on life. It completely changes the way you move in the world. It completely changes the way that you treat others and that you treat yourselves. And, you know, I since I've written my book and I've gotten my book out there, the call for me to step into my role model role and to be out there in the public sphere and to be in homes and teaching and I realized that that's going to be the rest of my life. You know, I'm not necessarily a missionary, but I know there's missionary work in the things that I plan on doing. You know, I plan on building community and getting people together to not only have a greater understanding of what God is, but to learn how to see each other as children of God, to learn how to live as a child of God, to be able to express to the world what exactly that is. Because there's plenty of people out here that they call themselves many names, and they put on their Sunday best and they go in and they look for a way to feel something. I remember Yeshua, when he was chastising the Pharisees and everything, he said that they were whitewashed tombs. It's a really cold line to throw at somebody, you know, saying you look clean on the outside, man, but inside of you is nothing but death. And I think about how many people that put on a pretty smile, that can speak the most beautiful scriptures, that wear beautiful clothing, and they show up shining like a new penny every time they go to church or synagogue or to the mosque. But they're whitewashed tombs. You know, they are people that are sleepwalking through life. You know, they've chosen the broad path that leads to death and destruction instead of the narrow path that leads to life, and they don't recognize it because they believe that what they understand or know is truth. But the reflections of that truth in their life shows that that is not what the Master taught. That is not how, you know, Lord Yeshua told us to live. It's not how so many of the masters and the teachers that we've been blessed with That's not what they taught. It's not how they showed how to be. And so often we miss the mark and we get off course because we stop listening to the masters. We stop following their directions. We stop following their instructions. And we see the people in the world that are living lives a certain way. And when we're not connected to our own inner being, when we're not connected to our own truth, then we might judge those people. We might condemn those people for living the lives that they're living. But they're doing the best they're doing the best they can. We all are. We're all doing the best that we can from wherever we are in our journey. And sometimes, in our journey of remembrance, we're the only thing that we really remember is how to not be loving people. And that's because of what we have around us. That's because of the environments that we grow up in and the different experiences that we have and how we process those experiences, man. People may show up to you being all kind of unkind ways and unloving ways, but the fact of the matter is they showing up that way because of how life has been before that. They ain't showing up being that way towards you or being that way in your life just because it's you. No. They have had a past. And if they're being unkind or being unloving, then you can probably guess that that's how their life has been as well. People don't generally just show up being angry and hateful and hurtful. That's not how things go. Human nature, and I've had to correct people on this many times. People like to think that human nature is violent and chaotic and mean and shit. And human nature is not that way. Human nature is the way that little children are. When we first come out into this world, one, we love every aspect of our body. We don't see anything wrong with us. We have very little fears. Very, very little fears. The loud noises and falling. Those are the initial fears that we have, and they're completely understandable when you're a baby. But as we move forward, we get taught shame. We get taught guilt. We get taught limitation. We get taught biases. We get taught judgments just from the people that are around us. We will think that something is impossible for us just because we had people around us that believed it was impossible for them, and they projected their limitations onto us, but their limitations don't have to be ours. When we look at the way that people are in the world, you're looking at a reflection of their belief systems. 1,000%, no matter what it is. I love and I treat people the way that I do because I believe myself to be a child of God. I have had enough experiences to recognize that I am never apart from God. And because of that, I know that if that is my truth, that is your truth. Because I am no different than anyone, because God does not create anything in inequity. And so if we were all made the same, and now when I say made the same, I'm talking about our souls. I'm not talking about these physical forms, because each one of us has chosen from the level of spirit to have these forms be different. And learning how to see that our differences are what make us the same, it changes so much for you when you recognize that the life-giving presence that is within you is our Creator, and that same life-giving essence also exists in every living thing. Well, then life looks very different to you. The experience of life becomes very different. When you know that the very air that you breathe is God in a very, very subtle form. that air is an expression of consciousness itself, well, then every breath matters more, you know. When you're being intentional with your breath, it matters so much more. Because you're realizing you're taking in something that is divine, and it's filling you more with what is divine. It's one of the reasons why in Sanskrit, you know, it's a fascinating thing in the Hindu culture that the word prana not only does it mean life force, but it also means breath. And, you know, I have the Essene Gospel of Peace here, and on Friday mornings you have the communion with the angel of air. One of the parts that it talks about is, you know, the key of wisdom is breath. You know, like, and I find this very fascinating, because when you look into trauma and doing trauma-informed studies, you start to find out that people that are in fight or flight or tend to be very stressed, they have very short breathing. They have very shallow breaths. And one of the psychological reasons for that is because when people believe that the external world is dangerous and it's unsafe, they don't want to take in as much of it, and so they have shallower breaths. They have very quick breaths. But when you go into the different spiritual teachings and spiritual practices, what they teach you is about, a lot of times it's about longer breaths, deeper breaths, fuller breaths, especially lower diaphragmatic breathing, because one of just the natural things about deep breathing is that when your diaphragm goes up and down from those really deep breaths, what it actually does is massages your internal organs, and it helps basically wring out any of the toxins that are in them. And so when you have your little shallow, just upper chest breaths, and you're not activating your lower diaphragm, you're actually not allowing your body to be able to remove the toxins that build up in our systems from the abundance of fucking poisons that we have around us and that we put in us all the time. And when you have people that have very shallow breaths, you can pretty much expect that they're probably going to have very shallow thoughts as well. And it's fascinating that, you know, the deeper breathers tend to be deeper thinkers. And when you take the time to really be mindful about how you're breathing, and you start really focusing on your breathing, you realize that your breath is the one thing that helps keep you in the present moment. It brings you always back to your body, and your physical form is always in the present moment. And our power is always in the present moment. And so that's where we want to be. We always want to be present. We want to be here and now, because that is where we have the ability to create. That is where we have the ability to heal. That is where we have the ability to make a difference. But that is also the only time where we actually exist. You can have your watch on, and you can look at that time on that watch, and no matter what that time says, it's always now. Always. Every damn letter on that, every number on that can just say now, and it's going to be that. If you called somebody on the other side of the world, it could be completely dark on the other side of the world, but the moment that you connect to that person on that phone, it is right now. It doesn't matter what their clock says, it's now. And, you know, Louise Hay, she has a book called The Power Within, and it really hammers home that idea that the power is always in the present moment. And we have to be able to harness the now moment. But so many people are trapped in these ideas about the future. And listen, your concerns about the future just show a lack of faith. Because if you actually had faith in God and that things would actually work out in your favor, you would never worry about a thing. But the very fact that you do worry, or that you do have concerns about the future, shows a lack of faith in God. It shows a lack of understanding in your connection, in your presence. And also it shows a lack of understanding in who you actually are. And I remember conversations with God saying that either people know that they are with God or they are afraid. And that understanding is so powerful to me, because if you know that God is in you, if you know that God is with you, why would you ever fear? Seriously, why would you ever fear? What would you possibly have to fear? If you knew that you were the child of God, if you knew that what your truth is that you are pure, loving, conscious awareness and creative spirit that is eternal, immortal, and indestructible, if you knew that as your truth, what could you possibly have to worry about? What could you possibly fear? What could you possibly be stressed about not being able to attain when you know that you are eternal and that you know that you're going to have more than one go at this? And that's the thing, they say that eternal life brings eternal peace. Well, if you don't recognize your truth, which is why knowing thyself is the most important thing to start off your journey. You have to know who you are, because if you don't know who you are, you cannot love who you are. If you can't love who you are and you can't accept who you are, then you will not express that purely and authentically, because you will always question yourself. That's why there are so many people out here that do not love themselves, because they don't know themselves. If you actually knew who you were, it would be fucking impossible to not love yourself. It would be impossible. Okay? The reason so many people experience so many of the things that they experience in their lives is because they have chosen to devalue themselves in such a way that spirit isn't going to argue with. If you say that I am less than, spirit says, okay, then so be it. Here's less than for you. It don't mean that you are. It just means that they're supporting you 100%. We are unconditionally loved and unconditionally supported always by spirit. And no matter what beliefs that we have, there is a spirit that is in alignment with that frequency, and it will absolutely be here for you. The lowest of the thoughts that we have the lowest of the spirits that there are in the lower astrals, and the ones that we consider demons and all of those things. They exist. Yeah, they exist, because they have a role. When you choose to exist in that realm, when you choose to exist in that thought space, it has to be supported in some way. Well, the really high loving angels ain't going to support you in all of that negativity, so there has to be something else. But that's still love. That is still support. Because our experiences let us know if this is the way that we want to go. If it ain't the way that we want to go, sin no more. Remember, that was it. Sin no more. That just means, well, if you recognize that you off course, stop being off course. Stay on the path. And you use the negative feedback, you use that feeling, that density, that heaviness to let you know when you're off course. And the further off course you are, the worse it feels. And if we just learn to use our emotions as the emotional guidance system that it is, and the understanding that any emotion that we have, whatever name or label that we've given it to us, is just us understanding and being aware of where we're currently vibrating at. And the dissonance that we feel within our bodies, the negative feelings that we have in our bodies, is letting us know that our soul is telling us that is not for you. That is not accurate. That is not aligned with the truth that I know to be true. And the further off we are from what our soul knows, or what our soul is seeking, because our soul has a purpose for being here. It didn't take these physical forms for no reason. And so obviously there is a pathway that it has set up for us, and then there's everything else. And when we finally can step onto that pathway, and then we pay attention using our intuition and using our discernment, we can recognize when we are stepping off the path, and we can bump ourselves back on it. And once we're on the path, now we're flowing with the river. Okay. Now we're going with the river. Now we can just lay back. We can just I'm just going to coast with the river and everything. Or we can start paddling. We can start paddling with that river. The river's already going in a direction. It's taking us to the ocean of abundance already. It's taking us to everything that is meant for us already. Now we can just coast, or we can speed that process up by doing the work, being diligent, being mindful, being altruistic, being of service, creating, forming loving circles, doing our kindness loving meditations and different things, sending out love to people. But more than anything, just choosing to live authentically. That is the greatest thing you could ever do for anybody else. To be able to access, and this is very Christian language, but to access the kingdom of heaven, okay? Because we got told, seek first the kingdom of heaven, seek first the kingdom of God, okay? First, you have to find your soul. You have to connect to your spirit. And when you do that, you can start letting that wisdom, you can start letting that love transform your mind, transform your words, transform your actions. And in doing so, the vibration that you hold will increase consistently over time. And what that does is it puts you in alignment for more and more greater things. It puts you in alignment for higher frequency people, higher frequency experiences. And so when it says that when you seek first the kingdom of heaven and its righteousness, that means that once you access that part of you, then you start expressing and acting and living from that part of you. And in doing so, all of the blessings, everything that you could possibly desire in this material world, everything that is meant for you will become available to you, because now you're no longer blocking it. When you know that you're a child of God and you know that you're something sacred and you know that you're divine and that you're worthy, you're not blocking anything. And then when you start to live from that, when you start to see that in other people, when you start to speak to that part in other people, you start getting those reflections back in everything in your life. Your finances will improve, your health will improve, your relationships will improve. Everything improves when you're actually aligned. And this is all it's about. It's not about right or wrong, good or bad. It is about alignment and coherence. Because when you're aligned, everything works. When you're coherent, everything flows properly. When you are living from that state, when they say walking in wakefulness, when you are absolutely walking in wakefulness, the world becomes so magical to you, because the awareness that you now have has expanded out so much. You're not just in this little tunnel vision that fight or flight and living in survival gives you. Now you have a greater understanding of the opportunities that are available, the options that are available. But not only that, the wonder and the joy and the magic in just being. When you can just look out into the world and you can look at nature and you can see the absolute genius in it. And when you recognize that that same genius that moves the wind is in me and around me at all times, then you know that there is something so unbelievably magical and incredible and magnificent about you that is just waiting to be expressed in the world. That is just waiting to be given to the world. I've lived from a state of being for the last year or so that I wish every human being on this planet could experience. I cry a lot. I cry all the time, but those tears come from the releasing of what no longer serves me. It's getting rid of all of the biochemistry from the negative emotions and negative thoughts that I've held, that my body, because my body loves me so much, it recognized that my mind couldn't handle all of it, so my body held on to it for me. Just like it does for each and every one of us. Our body loves us so much that it will hold on to all of the things that we cannot handle in this moment, so that over time it can be released. But we have to be willing to release it. But when we don't want to feel the things, when we don't want to be uncomfortable, our decadent lives have made us fearful of being uncomfortable. We have been made to believe that when you are uncomfortable, there is something wrong. But that doesn't mean that there's something wrong. The discomfort is where the growth is found. Whenever you lift weights and everything, you understand that for your muscles to build stronger, they have to tear. And in that tearing, there's going to be some discomfort that comes with that. But because of the process, because of the design, because of how we were made, that tearing, it gets repaired. And it gets built back stronger. There's beautiful metaphor that gets used all the time, and it's about the butterfly and the metamorphosis process. But what people don't understand is that the process of metamorphosis isn't a beautiful one at all. I mean, I guess beauty is in the eye of the beholder. But when you look at it, when that butterfly is in the chrysalis and the caterpillar goes into this chrysalis stage, what happens is that caterpillar gets completely broken down. If you opened up that chrysalis at a certain stage, you get nothing but a gelatinous goo. You wouldn't be able to recognize anything in there. And this caterpillar doesn't understand what's going on, but it knows that something is happening. For whatever reason, it decides that it needs to make this chrysalis. It needs to go into the dark. It needs to go within for a period of time. And during this time, there's the chaotic process of being torn apart and being put together all at the same time. Our world that we're existing in right now, this nation that we live in right now in the United States, is going through this process where the tearing apart and the putting back together is happening all at once. But if you don't recognize that this is what is going on, it looks very chaotic and it can look scary. But the fact of the matter is, inside of this chrysalis, there are things that are known as imaginal cells. The people in the world that know themselves as light workers, that are the way showers, that are the grid workers, those people, those are the imaginal cells that are holding the image, that are holding the identity that the human race can become moving forward. It is showing who we are and what we can become. And so the light workers out there in the world and holding up higher vibrations and showing new ways of being, and the indigos and the crystals and, the rainbow children and the super psychics, all of those are these imaginal cells that are moving us towards what we are meant to become. And when we watch this happen, we watch the formation and we watch everything shift and change and move exactly to where it has to go. And then what becomes of that, this gelatinous goo, is this butterfly. But inside this chrysalis, and this is a good part of where we are in the world today and where we are in our nation today, it gets to a point where the growth can't expand out any further in this chrysalis. And so this butterfly is starting to suffer. It's starting to suffocate. It realizes that this thing that has been holding it has now become something that is constricting it from its growth. And so now it starts to fight. Now it starts to wriggle. Now it starts to move and it's just trying to break free from this thing that is crushing it and that is suffocating it and causing it to suffer. And if we step in and we try to cut open this chrysalis, we cut open this cocoon during this process, you will see that butterfly will fall to the ground and die. It has to go through the struggle. It has to go through the fight. It has to go through these things to build up the strength so that when it finally breaks through, it has the strength to fly, to take off into its new life, and to see the world from a completely different vantage point that it ever knew before. All it knew before that was low and consumption and taking in and taking in and taking in and feeling and feeling and feeling. And now it finally has the actual opportunity to be free, to see the world in a different way, to expand the horizons of what is possible for it and the distances that it can travel. We all are in the middle of that process. Now, some of us have already broken out of our chrysalis, and you can see the wings. And I hope you look at yourself, because the butterfly never knows how beautiful it is. And I hope you understand how beautiful you are. Because once you can finally see that beauty in yourself, you can see that beauty in everyone, even if it's masked by layers and layers and layers and layers of distortion and layers of trauma and programming and pain. You can still see the beauty beneath it all. You can still see the light that fucking shines inside everybody. And yeah, we have dimmer switches in our minds and our hearts that lower the luminosity that we can actually put out into the world. But the fact of the matter is, we still control the switch. And I decided to be a person that will never ever dim someone else's light. You know, they say that one candle can light a million others without dimming its light. But the amount of light that can increase in the world is so, so, so powerful. And it is the light that we shine in the darkest of spaces that allows us to see what's actually in there, that allows us to go through it and recognize what is meant for us and what can be let go of, what is, I don't want to call it trash, but what is trash? We can take out the trash, you know. I'm always, when people talk about light and love, I talk about light and love in terms of shadow work. We got to use the light of our awareness and go into the shadow spaces of our psyche. And whatever we find with that light of awareness, we have to be willing to place love on it, to accept it. Because it's a part of us. If it's in our consciousness, it is a part of us. We cannot be aware of, we cannot be cognizant of something that is not a part of us. So if it is a part of us, it deserves to be loved, or at least accepted, which is a version of love. Acceptance is, it is what it is, man. I'm not gonna deny what is so. To live in truth. Truth is love. God is absolute truth. It is everything. But God is also love. If God is love, then love and truth are synonymous. So we have to be able to live as spirits of love and truth. We have to be able to live as spirits of love and freedom. We have to allow people to be able to be wherever they are in their own journeys, while also accepting and loving wherever we are in our own journeys. We don't have to look down upon somebody else because of where they are, because where they are is just a reflection of their own chapter and the story of their own life. It is a reflection of their programming. It is a reflection of their past. It is a reflection of whatever they have around them in the current moment. But that doesn't mean that's who they are. Who they are is the child of God. Who you are is the child of God. Who I am is the child of God. Now, how much of that you express, man, that's the journey, man. But it's still your truth. And I will never, ever, ever, ever take that away from somebody. I will never limit anyone. I call the men kings. That's short for King of Kings. You are the son of the King of Kings. When I speak to women, I call them goddess, because you are the daughter of the King of Kings. You are a reflection of the mother goddess of the divine feminine in physical form. And I will always speak to people that way, because from that position, when you can look at yourself as such, the value that you place upon yourself goes way the fuck up. And when that happens, then what you receive in your life has to go up as well. And when you see the changes, when you receive the blessings, then you are more likely to want to give from that abundance, to give from those blessings. And we all have the ability to do that. We all have that inside of us. We just have to be willing. We just have to be willing to give it. We have to be willing to put in the work to remove all of the barriers to love that we have within ourselves, so that we can show up as an unconditionally loving person, so that we can hold the space for people to grow into the greatest version of themselves. But if we're filled with fucking judgment and condemnation and biases towards people, then that automatically creates a barrier between ourselves and them. It creates a barrier between what's actually possible for them. Because in your reflection, they might see limitation, or they might see God. What are you going to be? How are you going to show up in the world? How are you going to be a reflection for the people around you? What are you reflecting to the world around you? Are you reflecting that you know that you are a child of God, and that this God is a God of love and benevolence and kindness? Or do you believe in something else? Are you reflecting something else? Are you reflecting the world? Are you reflecting who you really are? In one of my plant medicine ceremonies, I heard, is that how God would see this situation? It depends on the God that you believe in. Because if you believe in a judgmental, condemning, wrathful, punishing God, then you might say, yeah, that's how God would see this. But if you believe in a God of unconditional love, if you believe in an omnipotent, omniscient God, you believe in an infinite God, then you're going to look at situation and be like, nah, that's probably not how God would see that. And that changes you. And when you start looking at the world through the same eyes that God will look through the world, you're seeing through true eyes. You're seeing through the eyes that you actually have. But I know that takes time. But 1 degree of change, 1 degree, just think that. Just think that little bit. If you're walking straight and you do 1 degree of change and you keep walking that 1 degree, well, it may not be much of a difference at first. Get a few miles down that road. That 1 degree matters a whole lot then. Be the 1 degree. Be the 1 degree in somebody's life. Choose that 1 degree different that moves you closer to God. Now remember, closer is, you can never be closer to God than you already are. We spend an inordinate amount of time trying to get somewhere that we never left. How cool is that? It's one of those little cosmic jokes. We're all trying to get somewhere we never left. What changes is not where we are. What changes is our awareness of who we are. When that awareness shifts, so does everything else. I think that's going to be it for now, y'all. If you have comments, if you want me to talk about something in the future, hey, Jason, brother, thank you so much for being here, my man. I love you, and I'm honored that you shared this space with me. Anyone else that sees this after the fact, go ahead and throw some comments in there, questions, anything, topics. I got you. I'll be back on at another time. May the love and light of the one infinite creator envelop you now and for all the days of your life. May peace be with you. I love y'all. Be kind to yourselves.